Hi, everybody. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights does not disparage other rights retained by the people. That's our Ninth Amendment. I think what we have to understand when we talk about the Ninth Amendment is a belief that our founders had in natural law. The law given to us by God, or in some people's way of thinking, nature's law. Whether they're different or not is clearly open for dispute. But natural law encompasses an idea. A lot of people think you can't really put your finger on it. It can't be defined. But in a lot of ways, it has been defined. It's defined in the First Amendment with a natural right to worship God the way you see fit, to assemble, to speak freely. Those are natural rights. The rights of self-defense, the rights to defend oneself. And I'm not talking about the Second Amendment here, which is really a national defense amendment. But the right to defend oneself, I believe anyway, would fall under the ninth, under the natural law. So God created the world, and according to the Bible, he gave us dominion over the animals of the earth, the sea of the fish, and basically the planet to take care of. Man has an inherent flaw of wanting more power. Natural law gives us a way of attaining certain things that were given to us basically by birth into the human race. So you have a right to choose your mate, to find the person that you most want to be with. You have a right to have children, not have children. You've got a right to live singly. You have a right to be a carpenter if you wish. And at age 40, if you decide you don't want to be a carpenter, you can go back to school, you can get a degree in accounting, and you have the right to do that. Say you're born in Maine and you aren't happy with Maine. Maybe you want to move to Colorado. You have a natural right to do that. Everything is not defined. So you have a right to your papers and effects. And yes, that's defined, but it's also some of these things that are in natural law were defined. They were spelled out. So you have a right to your papers, your personal effects. You have a right to your own writings. And you have the right to do with them as you wish. You can copyright them. You don't have to copyright them. Same way with inventions. You have a right to get a patent, but you don't have to. You have a right to decide what you do with your own invention. And the same with your wealth. At the end of the day, when you pass away, you have the right, if you've spelled it out and done the proper thing and have a will, then you've spelled out what you want to happen to what you've acquired in life. There was a Supreme Court case in the early days of the Republic which had to do with inheritance. And our founders, who were in the Supreme Court at the time, they were doing duty traveling from one area to another, doing circuit riding duty, and they didn't always, as today, they write an opinion of a group, and then you have a competing opinion of maybe one or two that didn't agree. But in the early days of the Republic, they all wrote individually. And in this case, they were discussing how natural law should be considered. The one justice clearly said that natural law should be looked upon when making a Supreme Court decision. When you look And one of the others agreed with him on it and was writing separately about a natural law that he had the right to give his wealth to whomever he chose. Now, when we were arguing over the Constitution, and you had the Federalists that were generally for the Constitution, and you had the Anti-Federalists that were generally against it, some of the Anti-Federalists were arguing that we have to decide whether to accept this Constitution without a guarantee of natural rights. They felt they were giving up their natural rights, and what security do we have to in exchange for giving up those rights without a Bill of Rights? So they were arguing that we had a Bill of Rights. The ninth is describing a guarantee of rights. The enumeration, when you're enumerating something, I mean, the enumeration of these rights does not construe. So when you have when you've enumerated them, numbered them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For instance, the First Amendment has the right to religion, free speech. Second is the right to keep and bear arms. The third has to do with housing, military in your homes. So you have this whole list of enumerated rights. And the ninth says, just because it's not listed here does not mean it can be denied or disparaged against other rights that may have been forgotten when they wrote up the Bill of Rights. The rights of thought, the rights to decide how to live, who to be with, all these things, they're all natural rights. And natural rights are an important thing. And I understand that it almost takes a decision by the Supreme Court to decide what is a right and what is not a right. The number of children you want to have, for instance, or you can't have the government coming and telling you that you can't have children. These are all natural rights. And as we go through the Bill of Rights, we have to understand what they're really trying to do here is they're trying to disparage the national government from going too far and taking rights away. So it was a limited rights that were given to the federal government. And that's really where we're at here. These anti-federalists that people want to kind of poo-poo and say, well, it really doesn't matter because they didn't get their way. Okay. Well, one important thing they did get their way on, and that was they pushed a Bill of Rights. They didn't want to sign off on the Constitution without it. And their fight to get a Bill of Rights is what pushed the country to have one. So I think we really do owe them a debt of gratitude for what they were doing. I always had a problem with the ninth initially, understanding what they were talking about, because it isn't as spelled out and defined as we would like as some of the other amendments are. And it's kind of a catch-all because it's telling us that just because it's not there doesn't mean that we've lost those rights. A lot of time the 9th and 10th are kind of taken together. And the 10th basically is saying that if it's not here, if it's not discussed, then it belongs to the states and to the people. But the 9th is telling us that there are natural rights that are not defined, but that doesn't mean we've lost them just because they aren't spelled out. I hope you can understand the concept of what we're talking about here. When our country was first founded, we had a lot of religious people coming in. You had religious revivals. through the course of time. And you also had the Great Awakening that happened in 1730s and 40s, and then you had the Age of Enlightenment, which were kind of competing against one another. But these were two great movements in the 1700s that really put a big emphasis on what we have in our final documents. And I know a lot of people will tell you that this document's, 240 years old now. But it was made perpetual for a reason. And that's why it's open to amendments. And that's why it's open to a convention of the states, that could be called, is to make it perpetual so that it would be timeless. And it's for that reason that it's lasted as long as it has. Because instead of throwing it all out, we can simply amend it and correct it. I hope you got something out of this talk. Click the subscribe button so you won't miss any more. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks. Good day.